What's that gravel? They board that. Oh yeah.
Silver server, got full edge, and
Damn, roll it wide open on
my mother-in-law got it from he's very
I'll tell you there's more of that. It's
hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
oh, you know,
Something like that,
yeah, like halfway through, he wasn't really there. I mean, you're just like,
hey, all right.
I said hi to you. Pretty close.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Common Council for Monday, February 18th. Are we all up here? All right. Alderman Nicholson is running a little bit late. Okay. All right, there's 11 of us logged in. As I said, Alderman Nicholson is running late, so we've got a quorum. We've got a quorum. We're going to proceed. Let's all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of Green Bay. You're the giver of all we possess, the source of our strength, and we're grateful. This Friday, we celebrate National Caregivers Day. Across the nation, dedicated healthcare professionals serve those who require long-term care. National Caregivers Day honors those men and women dedicated to providing these vital services. We're grateful for the many volunteers and service organizations here in Green Bay and throughout our community who deliver a variety of services from personal care to medical services with compassion and professionalism. Let all of us see each day as an invitation to work through these organizations, to give the people we serve hope, security, and faith in their future. As always, we ask you to bless all the men and women in our armed forces, especially those serving on the USS Green Bay. We ask this in your name, amen. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderperson Corpus Dax. See no lights on this. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. And the minutes have been approved. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. By Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Stevens, to approve the agenda before you. See no lights. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. The agenda before you has been approved.
We're on to report by the mayor.
I don't have anything written down here. There's an election tomorrow, so everybody get out and vote. Other than that would conclude my report.
Announcements.
Come on.
Alderman Johnson, announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. Beginning Wednesday at noon for 24 hours, the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation is hosting a 24-hour online giving event. $250,000 has been donated by the Green Bay Packers Foundation, along with a few other foundations. I think there's a total match pool of $312,000. So for all donations made to one of 40 nonprofits during that 24-hour online giving event, it will be proportionately matched by those donors. So I encourage you to get out, give big, greenbay.com.
Thank you. Alderman Scannell, announcements.
Yes, Your Honor. Just two, and then.
Alderman.
I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you. Just two, and a thank you. Friday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. Come on down for an evening of fun and laughter backstage at the Meyer Theater. Donations accepted and proceeds in part to benefit Freedom House, Green Bay. Good cause. Hors d'oeuvre by Chef Nicole Hoida and DJ entertainment by Zaid Jazrawi. Then on the following day, Saturday, February 23rd, 8 a.m. to noon, get on down and shop fresh produce and local handcrafted goods at the last Winter Farmers Market presented by Bell and Health of the season at the KI Convention Center. And I would also like to thank everyone for all their prayers and good wishes. I had a successful radiation seed implant today. 70 tiny titanium radiated rods were implanted, and I might need to fidget a little bit, so I beg your indulgence, or stand up. And if you're speaking and I run to the bathroom, I'm not being rude, I'm being medical, so please forgive me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do you have any announcements? Okay, we can proceed.
Appointments, reappointments, redevelopment authority, Gary Delvo and Matt Schuler.
Motion.
Right, there's a motion by Alderperson Dorf, seconded by Alderperson Corpus Dax. Discussion here. Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it, and those appointments have been approved. Okay?
Public hearings, planning ordinance number 1-19, an ordinance amending the official map of the city of Green Bay to approve a plat of right-of-way for the Erie Road.
All right, so now we're on to a public hearing, and the public can come and speak, and this is the specific item of planning ordinance 1-19, and as stated by the clerk, amending the official map on the plot of right-of-way for Erie Road. Anybody here tonight who wants to comment or speak to that? This item, anyone wishing to be heard? Anyone wishing to be heard? All right, we'll let the record show now come forward.
Ordinances, second reading for adoption. You may, under suspension of the rules, take up items 1 and 2 with a roll call vote.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Scannell, seconded by Alderperson Dorf to suspend the rules for that purpose. All in favor of suspension, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it, the rules are
Motion to adopt.
suspended. There's a motion to adopt, Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Steuer. And you can use the board on this. This is the zoning ordinance 1618 and 119. Okay, and those ordinances pass on board of tender ones.
Mr. Mayor, if I just record as abstained on item 1 and yes as item 2.
Okay. All right, and those, that's noted by the clerk. Okay.
Report of the Protection and Policy Committee, February 4th,
Motion to adopt.
2019, and February 11th, 2019.
All right, so there's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Stevens, to approve the report of the Protection and Policy Committee. And those were for the meetings held on February 4th and February 11th. Any items, this is report K, are there any items under this report you wish to handle separately?
15.
Number 12.
Number 11.
Okay, hang on, guys. We're good. 16 is Mr. Vanderleest, is Alderman Vanderleest. I'm sorry.
Number 12.
Just three. Alderperson Dax. Did you? Okay, I've got 2. Alderman Galvin, did you?
Number 11.
Number 11. There was one other. There's 11, 12, and 16.
15.
And 15 for Alderman Scannell. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve report K, which is the report of the Protection and Policy Committee, all items with the exception of 11, 12, 15, and 16. And all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. All items have been approved with the exception of those 4. So let's begin with item 11. What are your wishes regarding item 11?
Motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderperson Dorf to approve item 11. Alderman Galvin, you pulled that. Hang on.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was at the Protection and Policy Committee meeting when this item was brought forth. Mr. McLeod is applying to transfer a liquor license for an establishment on Main Street. I think in all that was going on at that meeting, I think some things were overlooked. And I just would like to say that this council has a responsibility to all the citizens of our community. And that is, when we're granting these licenses, we need to look at past history, if it's there, of the applicants. And I think we need to look at that hard when recommendations are made from staff for either approval or denial and why they're making those motions. Mr. McLeod has a rather checkered past with various police departments, from owning taverns in the past and also from his own personal issues. He wrote a letter when he was initially denied, in which he made various claims, which some are fabricated and false. I think if any of you were hiring someone to run a business or interviewing someone to take over a business or something, if they were to refer to items in their past and they were to lie to you about that, even if it was a minor issue, where does that go to show you to the character, the type of person that we're dealing with? Mr. McLeod sent his letter that over 20 years ago he had an issue with, he was in possession of illegal drugs. And actually it was 12 years ago. And he said he had some Tylenol. And actually what he had was Vicodin, for which he did not have a prescription for. But he lied about it in his letter to the Protection and Policy Committee. He said he had some other personal issues with his former partner, which they ran a bar together. And those issues, though, affected that business and the dealings with police tying up city services, while he and his partner hashed out their personal issues in a public forum at the bar. He's been arrested several times for driving while intoxicated. The last was in 2017. He's had 19 interactions in which he was with law enforcement, and in almost every one of those he was intoxicated. Now, we have an individual that wants to run the tavern. He's in charge of dispensing alcohol. It's a drug, basically, but it's legal, it's acceptable within our society, our culture. But we want the people that are dispensing that to be responsible and to be accountable. Some of his past convictions include obstructing an officer, evading arrest, and again, intoxicated when these things occurred. Now, we granted him the license, but I'm making a motion to deny. And I think if we're going to have people operating businesses within the city of Green Bay, and those businesses are affecting the citizens either directly, how he's operating it, or indirectly, if he's drawing police services away from other parts of the city where they're really needed, I think we have to take things like that into consideration. And so I'm making a motion to deny.
All right, so Alderman Galvin is making a motion to amend item 11 to deny, and that was seconded by Alderperson LaFay. So this is, we're not doing the vote. This is on that motion to just change that word. We're still going to vote on it, but I still need to get this approved by the council to change that word. So the motion is second to change the word from approve to deny. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. That's fine. So the motion on the floor is to deny. And we can speak to that now. Alderman Sciano?
Thank you, Your Honor. I support granting the license. We did vet this, I thought, pretty well at the committee, and we voted unanimously to go on with it. There are several good points were brought up. We were concerned. We did, I think, investigate this pretty closely. The issues, a lot of the issues that he had were, one, he said it was his partners that were the problem. And we tended to believe that because since that time he has been running an establishment on his own, and there have been no problems with the police. So that gave that credence. We did not go deeply into some of the false information provided in his letter because we thought that if it had been reported accurately, it was still over a dozen years ago, and we would have discounted it as being something that was, a youthful indiscretion and no longer relevant because it was so old. So we really didn't dive into just how that discrepancy happened because we were trying to be economical with our time, and if, whatever the reason, if it had been reported accurately, we probably would not have taken it into consideration. So we did kind of vet this pretty closely, and he showed up as an owner of the establishment that he's going to be running, showed up and vouched for him. So there was a lot that currently is going well for him, and we wished him well, and so I still support giving him the license. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other lights on this? I don't you. Pam, do you have that other personal pay? No. Look, I'm not saying you need, it's just making sure that that's done right.
Should I just
It's not
withdraw it
showing
and then
up.
do it again?
Yeah. G.
So then,
So the same story?
Don't do all the person door first, I'm sorry. Motion on the floor to deny.
Okay, I'm wondering if it's appropriate at this point to make a motion to refer back to committee, because I think that there should be the opportunity for the person to be heard again. All the members of the committee weren't at the committee that evening, so would that take precedence?
It would,
Okay,
but-
then, but we could also talk about this first, what would you?
You have the floor. I'm just saying that if you make a motion to refer this back to committee, I'm gonna need a second.
Oh, okay.
So you wanna make that motion?
Well, I would make that motion based on, if we're gonna have a longer discussion about this, I think we should have that discussion at committee and not here. So I'd like to make a motion to refer back to committee.
A motion, there's a second to that?
I'll second it.
All right, and a second by Alderman Vanderleest. So this is on referral. You still wanna speak?
Yep.
Anything else you wanna say on that, Alderperson Tor?
No.
All right, Alderman Spano, and then I'll get to Alderperson Lefebvre.
Okay, I'm against referral back. He did appear at the committee. I can't imagine what else he would say. I don't know what else we would do at the committee. If he were here to speak for the entire council, which we made clear, is a possibility that council might pull this item and you might want to be here to speak to the entire council. I think that might benefit him, but to come back to committee, I don't know what we would do differently. I mean, he's already spoke, we're not gonna hear anything differently. I don't know that it's profitable to send this back to committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go to Alderperson Lefebvre and then Stoyer. Alderperson Lefebvre?
okay, mine is a clarification. Okay, say the council approves this tonight, and then there are some problems with, maybe he's caught drunk driving, whatever. What happens then? What's the process that will happen to that license? Will it be pulled right away? Because that's the thing we have to look at. I mean, it could be a, big issue that happens, and then we approved it. We can't take it away right away.
Okay. Do you think, so the motion on the floor is to refer this back, but let me have the attorney answer your question. Hang on.
The only way to, get the license away from them once it's been granted is to do a revocation. That is a lengthy process, so it's not impossible to do. It's something that is done as standard practice in a number of municipalities, but it is a lengthy process and there's a lot more involved with it.
It could take months.
Good. Alderman Stoyer?
Thank you, Your Honor.
On referral.
Well, I guess I wanted to ask, Alder Scannell, when we, had that meeting, do you remember offhand what the police and the law said that they disapproved it initially, right?
They
They disapproved it, or just.
All right, do you want to hear from the police chief?
I'd like
me to address.
Well, I guess
Alderman
here's
Scannell,
the
you want to talk
question.
to the attorney? Tell me how you want to proceed here.
The question I have, I need to talk to the police chief on this, because, yeah, chief, Alder Galvin brought up some points here, and I guess the question I have is that, a lot of times our committee will listen to our law department and the police as far as the information that they have. And was the information that Alder Galvin just presented, was that presented at all before?
Yes, my
Was
understanding-
everything there?
Sir, we had that information. I think Alder Galvin articulated it very well, and our recommendation as a department was that we not grant this.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page on that, so. All right, that's all I have.
Didn't know you had the kids with you. Hey guys, how was Lion King? I heard it was awesome. All right, back to regular business. That is all I see for lights. This is on referral, so there's a motion and a second to refer this item back, and I'm going to have you use the board on this. A yes vote would send this back to the committee, a no vote would keep it here. Okay, so that motion fails on a vote of 4 to 7, so we're gonna go back to, right?
Yep, back to deny.
The original motion on the floor, which is to deny, so you can hit your lights again and I'll re-cue you.
So no on denial, denies, denial.
Okay. I'll run the meeting, I got 3 more. Yes, a yes vote would deny, but we'll wait for that. Alderman Galvin, you have the floor. This is on the motion to deny.
Thank you. And, Randy, with all due respect, you think a lot of these incidents happened in the past, and he's shown some steps to correct that. If you even look at the letter he wrote to the committee, he was married in 2013. After that, he's been arrested twice for domestic charges in which he was intoxicated. He met another young lady that he seemed to have a relationship with. They opened up another tavern. And it was mostly in 2017 and 2018 that they ran that tavern. And it was during an argument with her that he became intoxicated at the tavern, left and was stopped for drunk driving in 2017 with a BAC 2.5 times the legal. Again, we could say 12 years ago for the drug conviction, even 12 years ago, he feels the need to lie about it to the committee. And then these other convictions were in the much more recent past. And I'm all about people trying to get themselves going, but I just don't think that, again, it's our responsibility. We're the ones that have to answer the people if there's issues with this place, and I'm not willing to take that risk at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we've talked a lot about drunk driving and how to curtail that as a community and a state, and we talked about sober serving and some of the issues we're trying to do with that. And this one, before Alder Galvin brought it up, had a lot of red flags in it. And for me, that was the big one. He's 45 right now. A mere 2 years ago, he had an OWI. Before that, he had 2 before that. And it always seemed like in his letter described when things became tough, when it was stressful. Well, learning about it, I imagine it's not going to be a non-stressful thing. I just wait for the next stressful thing to happen and some errors to happen. And guess what? We're the ones who approve it. And too many red flags for me. I'm going to vote no. Thanks.
Dr. Birch, you're going to vote yes, because a yes denies it.
I stand corrected. You said.
I don't have any other lights on. So the motion on the floor is to deny. So a yes vote denies the license, a no vote would approve the license. Be good?
Just to clarify, the no vote would not actually approve it. You still have to do the vote for the council.
Okay, all right. But a yes vote would deny it. Okay, so that motion is approved. On a vote. Okay, 10 to 1. So the license is not granted. Right, let's continue. We are on to item 12. Item 12 is to approve an application class B for Carvanas. What do you wish is with item 12?
Motion's approved.
Alderman Scannell, seconded by Alderperson LaFave. Alderperson Corpus Dax, you had pulled this.
I just wanted to be noted as abstaining because I work part-time at Car.
All right. So with that, there's a motion, a second to approve item 12. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay, noting the abstention of Alderperson Corpus Dax. We are now on to item 15. Item 15 is to receive, place, and file a request by Alderman Scannell to create an ordinance regarding sober service. What are your wishes regarding this item? There's a motion, Alderman Stoyer.
Second.
Second by Alderman Galvin to approve item 15. Alderman Scannell, you had pulled that.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. All I'm asking for is that we send this back to committee. Well, I'm sorry. We send this to staff to write up a law that we can then go over committee and council, and to keep this discussion going. I think this is a valid discussion to have. I myself do not know if ultimately, when all is said and done, I will support this, because I don't believe you can force people into, we need to have a public discussion and get the majority of people on board. If the minority is not on board, I think this law is going to be pretty useless. But I definitely think it's worth discussing, it's worth pursuing, and I would ask that we, I'm making a motion to send this to legal with the idea of finding servers with a blood alcohol content of 0.04%, and that this would be enforced. I'm not exactly sure what the language would be.
Why don't you just make a motion to amend this to send the staff to create an ordinance regarding this, and you can hash out the ordinance when it comes back. I mean, you want all the details tonight, 0.04 and hours.
Well,
that's up to you guys.
Well, I just want to give staff some instruction on what to put in it, so
okay.
Just one more thing, and that the language would be that this would be secondarily enforced, that we wouldn't be doing raids to do just see if servers are sober. Saying that would be, and then report that to committee.
So, I'm gonna get
so it's
a motion.
staff.
Here's this. You're gonna amend this. There's a motion following this down to amend item 15 to send to staff a request to create an ordinance regarding sober servers to include. Tell me the 3 things you want in there.
Find only servers with a blood alcohol content of greater than 0.04%, and that this would be secondarily enforced.
Okay.
And then report it to committee, and
Yeah,
I might even hold it in committee for a while to make sure we get enough public support. I really think this is the discussion we should be having. I know these issues of alcohol and sobriety have come up many times at committee and at council. I don't know why we don't want to fully vet this out.
Okay, let me get this on the floor before we.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a motion by Alderman Scant to amend item 15 to send to staff to include only servers of 0.04 and secondarily. Is there a second on that? All right, and that's seconded by.
All right, thank you.
So do you have anything else you want to say about that?
That was it. Thank you.
Okay, so we got the motion on the floor. Anybody else want to speak to this?
I got my light on.
Got Alderperson Dorff. Alderperson Dorff.
Thank you. Yes, I think we need more discussion on this. I think it was a good discussion, but an incomplete discussion, and more research should be done. So I'm glad to see that it's going to go to staff and that there'll be some research done, and we'll talk more about it before we decide. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Vandalist, I do not have your light on, but I'm happy to recognize you.
Thank you, Mayor. We did talk about this at committee. The Tavern League was there. We talked to the Green Bay Police Department, and they didn't feel it was an issue. There's not 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 citations, or the problem doesn't seem to be there. The Tavern League people got up and spoke about how they run their businesses, and they just feel it's more regulation. And I think the Tavern League is doing a good job as far as they offer people ride homes that need a ride if they're intoxicated, and they got the resources that they're using for that. And I just feel that I wouldn't support this type of ordinance at this time. There doesn't seem to be a problem in the community. The police chief said it wasn't a big problem, and I just think it's more policing and more how would I say it? Big brother watching over very closely, and I think they're doing a good job at Tavern League Guard this time, and that's my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Alderman Weary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of sending this back. I think we should look at this at committee more in depth, and we can hash it out there. I think there's some merits to the proposal. The Wisconsin Alcohol Policy Project is a very good document that I hope is used at committee. They show some of the efforts that were done around the state and other states, and what can be done. I think we can find some middle ground here that can address that big monster that we've been talking about even on the previous issue. So anything we can do to help it and try and preserve some of the freedoms, obviously that's important, but it's a controlled substance, and we have every right to put controls on it. Thanks.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Mayor,
Trying to speak.
Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Did I hear right that the chief said there isn't a problem? Is that what Vanderlee said?
That is what Alderman Vanderleest thought he said.
Okay. Well, if there's no problem, then why are we looking at it?
Yeah, you're asking me?
Well, you're the chairman. I'd like to go through you to...
Why don't you ask the chief?
Okay. If there is no problem, what I heard, why are we looking at it?
So chief, this is where the whole sober server ordinance, the motion is to send this to staff to look at creating a policy. Your comments?
Yeah, the question came up whether there were problems that the police department was having with intoxicated servers. And it's not something that we've been focusing on, certainly in the time that I've been there or before that. We don't get radio calls of intoxicated servers working behind the bars, things of that nature. I think the idea behind the ordinance is, do we want to have servers that could be intoxicated and maybe not using good judgment when they're at work? And that's kind of where the ordinance was going, my understanding. But as far as us getting radio calls or having calls for service of intoxicated servers, we really don't get that.
Okay. So it doesn't look like there's a problem. It doesn't look like we're accumulating numerous calls. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, is that the answer? Okay. Well then, why aren't we looking at every little thing in the city of Green Bay? I mean, I could create some list, 100 to 200 items we could look at. I mean, there's some times where the government should stay out of private business. If there's a problem, I guess the owner of the establishment would take care of it. And if it creates to be a larger problem, the police will be intervening. So as long, I mean, if receiving information that it isn't a problem, so why are we looking at it? I guess that's what I'm asking. Thank you. And Chief, you did answer it. Thank you.
We'll go to Alderman Johnson next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 points, and I think one is, Alder Scannell, you included on your motion the fact that we would not be proactive with, just popping into places and kind of testing people, and if we're not getting complaints about it, and we're not going to do that, I wonder, it seems to me that the purpose of it is only punitive when there's an issue that comes up. And so, I guess I tend to agree with Alder Nicholson here. That to me is a solution that's trying to find a problem. We've used that term here frequently, and so I am going to vote to deny this going back to committee. I don't necessarily want to argue the points of this so much to say that if the purpose of this is to problem solve an epidemic in our community, which is we have an alcohol problem, I would much rather see a comprehensive approach to how we do that, because it's been stated today that there doesn't seem to be a problem. I've seen research on this, that other communities that have this ordinance, they haven't been able to determine its effect or that it's had any type of impact. In which case then, rather than starting to infringe on people's rights to own their business and manage their business the way that they see fit, I'd rather have us address the problem holistically. And at that time, I think I'd be willing to have a healthy debate around the merits of that proposal along with others to control the epidemic within our community.
For clarification, the motion isn't to refer this back, this motion to send this to staff to draft an ordinance.
Oh yes, I'm sorry,
okay.
And I would still vote no to that.
Right, fine. You should turn your lights off. Did you want to speak again, Alderman Nicholson or Alderman Ware? Yeah, and I've got some other lights coming up here. We'll go to Alderperson LaFay.
I concur with the last alderman that have spoken, that I don't think this is a problem. If the chief felt it was a problem, then I can see something doing, but it doesn't do anything. It's like, I don't know, it's an overreach of government telling, if the tavern league is doing the job that they should be, and then we start getting problems with servers that are, intoxicated, we get the calls, then I think we need to do something. But I think we're wasting our time on this, and I think it just I'm gonna vote no on the referral, and I would also vote no on this ordinance. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Steuer.
Thank you, Your Honor. We did speak out on this at length at committee, and I think I voted in favor of not putting this forward. I think one of the things that came forward with the Brown County Tavern League representation, they stated that it seemed like another piece of preemptive legislation, that we're anticipating an issue. I know that, you know, alcohol has been an issue in our community for some time. But I think with the testifying at that committee, I really felt comfortable with the Brown County Tavern League saying that we do take care of our own. And if there is an issue, as Alder Nicholson said, that the police will step in. So I will concur with Alder Vanderleest and Nicholson on this.
All right, thank you. Alderman Scannell.
Yes, I was hoping to avoid this kind of debate on the floor, and that we could hash this out in committee. This is a holistic approach. The holistic approach is there are businesses, taverns in our community that as a part of their business model, their employees drink. What other business allows employees to drink on the job? And though the police do not have this specifically picked out, I was hoping we could get some more details from them if we gave them the time, where when they do get calls, how many of them involve servers that have been drunk, and how much can we determine that that was the source of the problems for the call? That the police were called for something else, but if you look at it, part of the problem is the server is intoxicated, and that may have been the cause of all of what came forward after, that it resulted in a police call. So this is a holistic approach. It's looking at, if we take a point of how you can address alcohol in our community. There's prohibition, there are dry cities. I don't think that's a good way to go. I don't think that's practical. But there is, and we have made strides with this in our society, with responsible drinking. So that's my holistic approach, responsible drinking. Is it responsible for employees to be drinking while they're working? I know of no other business that allows that as part of their business model. Certainly I want to have further discussion on this. I really didn't want to get into all this, but when someone comes to us for a license, they have to sit down with the police and make out a business plan that was part of their application. And part of that plan is sober servers. So we expect new applicants to follow that policy. We have no enforcement for anybody else because they've been grandfathered in. They're not coming before us for a new license. It just seems to me that we maybe want to level the whole playing field, get everybody doing what is considered best practice by many businesses. Many businesses already do this because they consider it best practice. Well, maybe it should be for everybody. And I don't really want to go into this on the floor here, but it seems to be unavoidable. I really wish we could send this back to committee and have this discussion there with many others on this issue. I think it's worth having. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, your motion is to send it to staff.
I'm sorry.
All right, I just want to be clear.
But eventually it'll come to committee.
Of course it will. All right, Alderman Galvin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have experiences with alcohol like none of you have had unless you either were a cop or ran a tavern. I've found servers passed out on the floor with the patrons serving themselves over the top of the bar. We've had servers that were intoxicated and serving people that were falling down drunk. And there's no ordinance against that. They leave it up to each community. Alcohol is a problem in our society, but it's an accepted part of our culture. And I think we have to look at the fact that since we've started the bar tavern plans many years ago, every new bar plan that's drawn up, we require sober service. Some of your best businesses out there require sober service. And what they find with sober serving, profits go up, problems go down. We also did a study And over half of their disturbances during that study, over half of the disturbances, the servers were intoxicated. And they were also uncooperative and belligerent with police during that investigation. These are the things we have to think about. Is there a problem? Are people complaining, hey, my server was drunk? No, we're not getting those kind of complaints. Are we getting those complaints when the servers are intoxicated? Well, we have one right here. We just denied his license. He was working at a tavern. His BAC was .22. Now, how cognizant would he be if he was over-serving someone else and allowing them to get in a car and drive away that night? Is that what we want in our community? I don't think so. I think we want taverns to be run responsibly and know that the people who are going there are drinking responsibly and they're not going to be putting other citizens or themselves at risk. And I think this at least deserves a look. There's a lot of research and study out there that we haven't even started to look at. A lot of it's done by UW-Madison, and it's out there for us to read and to sift through. England has done a huge workup on this because they've had so many problems with intoxicated people and the problems it brings. When I was on the police department and I was community police captain, I did a study on police calls for service in downtown Green Bay, a 6-square block area. Friday night, 10 o'clock to Saturday morning, and Saturday night, 10 o'clock to Sunday morning at 4 a.m., 80% of our police officers were in a 6-square block area of Green Bay every weekend. 80%. That left 20% to patrol the whole rest of the city and solve any problems out there. So, will having sober servers completely solve all our drinking problems? No. But we have to take steps. It's part of the puzzle. And we have to put these pieces together to try and make this a community that isn't looked on as the drunkest city in the United States. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Defense of the downtown, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Alderman Burnett?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's a good discussion and good points all the way around. I'm in support of this, sending it back to staff, and from there going before the committee again. I like Alderman Scannell's idea that this would be a secondary enforcement, that we're not going to necessarily send police in to search for this on its own, but if our police go there and notice some other violations or things that just aren't right or legal, then they can cite people who violate this law if it ever gets to that point. So I'm in favor of that, and Alder Galvin is correct. This is a piece of the puzzle. We have a lot of work to do in this community to keep people safe from people who drink alcohol to excess, and it's a good idea to continue it on. Now, I don't mean this as a disrespect to the tavern lane, but we got to remember that they're an interest group that's looking out for the interest of, I understand they're claiming to be in the best interest of the community as a whole, but they're also called the tavern lane, so they are also doing what's in the best interest of the tavern. So we definitely should receive what they offer, but definitely don't take that on its own. That we should use their input to override what's best for the entire city and everyone that we serve. So I'm in favor of sending this to staff, and I look forward to another good discussion at the committee level.
Alderman Weir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad Alder Galvin brought up the Wausau, because I was going to mention that there was a former police chief, Jeff Handel. He's the one who estimated that when his officers responded to problems at bars, there were impaired servers half the time, and he believed that that's what led to some of the problems at the bar. Now, I also don't believe people call the police to report that their bartender's a little bit tipsy. That's probably why we don't get calls on that. I mean, if you're getting served and you're happy, who's going to call the police on that? That's just not a call you get. But I do believe when you're going there for a main issue, that is a secondary effect, and we can use this ordinance that way. I don't know why we aren't using every tool available to us to combat drunk driving. If this is one small piece, so be it. It's one small piece, but that's how you build a big pyramid. So let's allow committee to do some further work on this. Thanks.
All right, thank you. last slide I have is Alderman Steuer.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just testified on how I felt about this, and after listening to Alder Galvin and Alder Burnett, I feel that it should go back. I appreciate the insights here. You know, I do appreciate what Alder Burnett said. You know, it is the Tavern League; they do represent themselves. But I don't think it's going to hurt anybody to have it sent back and discuss it. So I'm willing to go that route. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I got my light on.
Okay, make sure that's working. I guess I don't see that. Alderman Johnson, I have your light on. I'll recognize you next. All right, I got it now.
I just want to emphasize, I guess, one point. I'm not opposed to talking about this issue long term, but you know, there's been an analogy thrown out here that it's one piece of the puzzle, but you can't assemble a puzzle if you don't have all the pieces. And that's the piece that I'm most concerned about. We're saying again that this is going to be something that's going to deter this issue in our community. But in Alder Scanlon, you said this is holistic. I'm not sure how one issue is holistic. We need to talk about, before we start taking away privileges or rights that are currently experienced by people in our community, we need to understand the impact. And that is the discussion we're not having. I'm willing to sacrifice this item short term for us to have a long-term picture on what it's going to take to address this epidemic in our community. So when I vote no to this, I want you to understand that it's not to say this shouldn't come back again in the future, but I really want to see us taking a look at everything that needs to be addressed. I know that there are a couple of organizations in our community that tackle this issue, and to my knowledge, none of them have brought this up as a solution. I suspect it's because nowhere it's been proven to deter those issues in their communities. We're not even talking, and perhaps this is what you want out of this issue, but we're not even talking about what it's meant to do. I mean, what are the metrics, what are the benchmarks that we're going after, and how it'll impact our community. So again, I'm going to vote no to this, but it's not that I don't think we shouldn't talk about it again, but I think we need to talk about it in context with a lot of other things that are going to help address this issue.
Okay, thank you. To be clear, the motion on the floor is it says it's the staff, okay? Alderperson LaFay and then Alderman Vanderleest, I'll get to you. Go ahead.
Okay, this is one reason why, and Alderman Scannell didn't want this discussed here, but I think it's important that it was discussed here because we're hearing from different people who have different perspectives on this issue, and that's why I'm going to change my vote to refer it, because I think maybe it is a good thing to discuss it, to find out what's going on, and maybe we're not getting the full picture from, you know, at least because maybe that wasn't the reason they were at the bar and they didn't realize. Maybe the server was drunk and didn't realize. There's so many things that this, you know, involves. So I'm going to change my vote for referring it back.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Vanderleest.
Thank you, Mayor. At committee, we did vote to receive and place on file. I don't think the city staff should be doing any extra work until we actually vent it. You know, to have them, you know, draft up anything. I think it's a lot of extra. We should discuss it before we do any, if we're going to want to discuss it somewhere, we should discuss it and not have city staff drawing anything up at this time. Okay. You know, I think, you know, city staff has enough to do right now. And, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're pushing the envelope on this one because it's 2 times on an issue.
It'll be quick.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I did not think this up on my own. This came forward. I've been having discussions with groups who are concerned about looking at the whole issue, and we will be coming forward with more things. You don't get the whole pie at once. It just doesn't work that way. We look at doing what we can when we can. This is one step that they asked to bring forward as a very small, low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And so we are. A holistic approach is being looked at. Other steps to we can follow are being looked at. As we get more together on those will be coming forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And Alderman Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One point that I forgot to mention was that
I look at this as an opportunity to collect data on an issue that some people say is a problem, other people say it's not a problem. We have no idea unless we have some sort of data. So if we push forward on something and a good ordinance or law is created after referring to staff and then committee and implemented, and then the police secondary enforce this and realize 10 or 20 or 30 bars throughout the community have servers that are intoxicated, then we realize, then we have data to really further this issue. So without it, we're just going on, it's not a problem. Well, how do we know it's not a problem? We need to collect some sort of data, and we can actually do something good while we collect that data. So I'm still in favor of referring to staff. Thank you.
So we're gonna vote. The motion on the floor is to, item 15 is to amend this, to send to staff to create an ordinance regarding silver servers to include less than or greater than 0.04 and as a secondary measure.
We use the board, please.
Oh, yeah, you already said that. So a yes vote sends this to staff, a no vote. All right, so that passes on a vote of 7 to 5. All right, so that you will see that again. Thank you. We are now on to item 16. Item 16 is referred to staff on amended general ordinance of 119 and ordinance creating a section relating to leaving keys in a vehicle. So what do you want to do with this? Is the motion is to refer to staff. So a motion by Alderman Sciano.
To approve? Second.
Second by Alderman Galvin. Alderman Vanderleest, I think you pulled this.
Thank you, Mayor.
Again, this is to refer this to staff.
We did have some discussion on this, and I did do some checking in the community, and the sentiment that came back was that people don't want to have a fine if they have their car stolen. And we talked about, at committee, we talked about if the car is stolen, this, and the Green Bay Police Department retrieves their car, that they should pay the towing fees. That was what I got back from different people in the local area, in my district. And they thought that they didn't care to have a fine, but they would be happy to pay for their towing fees to get their car back. And I think that's where this should go. I think a motion that we do not give them a fine, but we give them pay the towing fees to get their car back. That would be my motion.
Mr. Vanderleest,
I don't really want to return it back to staff, but we can, but, you know, I feel.
Well, I think the staff was going to create an ordinance, and then that was going to go back to the committee, and they were going to amend the ordinance. So they would just come back with an ordinance, which was reducing the fine to $50 and a 2-year sunset. Would you like to add something to that, or do you want to? I would think we should do the ordinance tonight. You don't have anything to vote on right now.
Okay.
So the motion on the floor is to refer this to staff.
My input would be that we can return it to staff, but not to try to collect the fine. Have the staff, enact the towing fees back to the person. If the Green Bay Police Department retrieves their car, that they would pay the towing fees. At present time, the Green Bay Police are paying the fine, and the citizens are not. According to the chief. That'd be my input on that.
Point of clarification.
Okay, quickly, what?
Yeah.
I think you've done.
Yeah, the problem with that is that we cannot just find, that would be a separate communication. It's a separate issue, because we would not be talking about just cars with keys left in them. We'd be talking about every stolen vehicle, which is a much broader and really different subject.
Not really. He wants this added to this ordinance.
Right, but it's impossible to enforce unless we make it every stolen vehicle. We talked about that at committee. So it really needs to be its own communication. that we're going to enforce a towing fee for every stolen vehicle.
Okay, we all agree this is gonna be referred to staff to be amended. Alderman Bagley just wants to add in that they pay for the towing of vehicles. You're saying we can't enforce that, which I think is his job to decide that, but I want to hear from the city attorney. Hang on.
There has to be a rational basis in order to discriminate against entities that are similarly situated. We can look into it further as to whether or not that's something that we could do, but generally you don't want to treat like people differently.
And if I may, I don't want to speak for Chief. Oh, sure.
Should I pipe up for you?
We'll let the chief say.
Okay, let's
go.
go.
Chief, on the towing of vehicles,
So if we were to impose a towing fee for everybody, it would be $25 or $50 per car. That would be for everybody whose car gets stolen, regardless of the circumstances. It'd be hard for us to discriminate if we could say your keys were in it. I would imagine people would start saying, well, my keys weren't in it. I don't know how it got stolen. Even if we do find the keys in the car, hanging from the ignition, they would say, well, I don't know how he got those keys. He must have taken them from somewhere. So I think we'll get a lot of people not reporting exactly the circumstances of how their car was stolen. But we can work on that in committee, and I can have our guys work with the city attorney to see if we can come up with something that is reasonable and report it back to the committee.
yeah, I think it's fine that we study this, that Alderman Bagley's, I'm okay with that motion to add this to the direction of
It'd be for
staff.
any car that would be stolen in the city of Green Bay.
We're not talking about that. We are just, this ordinance is strictly for leaving your keys in the vehicle. That's what they're drafting right now. If you want to put in a different ordinance to fine people for towing for towed vehicles, that would be a communication I'll take later in the meeting. So we're just, I want to be clear, I want to be with you on this one. So right now, we're just drafting an ordinance for leaving your keys in the vehicle. Do you want this to be part of that, or do you just want them to draft an ordinance and come back to the committee?
Well, my thoughts are that we try to retrieve the towing fees back to the city of Green Bay.
From all vehicles. So
From
let's
all
just do
vehicles.
that later tonight.
Okay.
Let's just go with this keys in the vehicle thing as a.
But I think on this part of the ordinance, I think that they should pay the towing fees to get their car back, but not a fine. On this part of the ordinance that we're talking about right now. If we're gonna separate it out, then I would say that I would add the part that no fine, but that.
We're gonna hash it out later. I'm gonna just allow it. So hang on. So the motion, item 16, is to send this to staff to reduce the fine $50, provide a 2-year sunset, and add a towing fee for vehicles.
That's in there right now, but
No, it's not. You just added it, so I just want to get a second to adding that portion to this ordinance. Anybody want a second? Okay. All right, can we move on? So your motion on the floor is to add a towing charge to this ordinance. Okay, thanks. Alderman Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to speak to this once. I know there's an amendment, but I'm opposed to referring it back with whatever the amendment is. The number of stolen vehicles with keys in the car has been on a downward slope for the past 10 years. It seems like it's resolving itself. I have zero interest in fining somebody for leaving their keys in their car. So no matter what we amend it to, I'm not going to refer it back. Thanks.
All right. All right, I don't see any other ones. We're going to vote on the amendment. We're going to use the board. Item 16 is to refer this right to staff to create, to amend our municipal code for leaving keys in the vehicle. And Alderman Vanderleest wants to amend this to include towing fees. So a yes vote would amend it, and no vote wouldn't. Alderman Nicholson.
Got a question, Chair, or Mayor. Is this a vote to send it all back?
No, it's to amend it, and then we will adopt as amended.
Okay.
He wants to add the towing fee. It's just the amendment. We're gonna vote to adopt as amended.
Okay. I want to change my vote.
You didn't vote yet. I don't have you registered.
Oh,
Do it for the board. Right? I'm not. Okay, guys, we are voting on amending item 16 to add, including towing fees. There was a motion and a second to amend item 16. If that passes or doesn't, we're still gonna vote to adopt as amended or not as amended. You good? Keeping you awake?
I only have 3 of you guys voted, and this board, so you vote. Yes vote amends it, and no vote doesn't.
I picked a good time.
Cancel it, we're gonna one more time. Sorry. There's a motion and a second to amend item 16 to include towing fees. A yes vote adds towing fees, a no vote doesn't. Whether this gets referred to staff or not is gonna be the next vote. Got it?
Oh, okay. No, I'm gonna change my vote. I misunderstood the motion.
Pam? Hang on.
Can you scrap the votes that were taken and just start over?
So that's why we have the employee of the year here.
No pressure.
That was last year. No, let's just put it on voting.
We want a new void system for those of you interested in this.
The old system of blows and flares, or?
Right, we used to put our heads down and raise our hands. Okay, we got 2 votes in, we need 10 more of you to vote.
Nothing's up.
Nothing's up, it's on the screen.
What?
Raise a hand and show the court. For a voice list.
Raise our hands.
Raise your hands.
We tried to reset it a couple times.
Okay, that's not it for tonight, this is just this one vote. Okay, so
We'll see.
the amendment, so much for you right, it was last year's employee of the year. So, those in favor of amending this to include the towing fees, can you by show of hands, raise your hand if you want to do this? 1, 2. Alright, so that's gonna fail on a vote. Those opposed, raise your hand so I got it for the record. 10-2. Alright, so we're back to the original motion, item 16, which is to refer this whole thing to staff. Do we vote on this? Item 16 is presented. Mike, Pam, here we go. Alright, vote.
Nope.
That's the old one.
Yeah. That was the old vote. Alright.
We could probably do this one out of this.
This is to refer the staff, just. I'm not doing the rest of the night. You good? Right. Mike says we don't, we're gonna take a little break right after this vote. So item 16 is to refer to staff this ordinance. It's presented here again. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Show of hands, who wants to refer this to staff?
Can it be recorded?
Yep, we will.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that fails on a vote then. 5 to 7. 7 to 5. Right. While we readjust this, that's the end of that report. We're going to go around and can we just take a 5-minute break? And I just want to, you guys approved the license for Scallywags, and we're delighted you're coming downtown. We're excited. We love your restaurant, and we're looking forward to it.
Well, you can handle that. Where's your spine?
I think it was in the staff. I don't know if
I'll give it my best shot. I really should.
What do you mean why?
Do I? Is that like a... I said it and I was like, that's not where does that rank in the pantheon? Quit writing it down.
It's better that you're working.
I bet one of the statements does some authority.
Oh, I don't know, pretty well.
Oh, more.
Mark, I got your door knob right here. It got lost with the 10 postcards I got. I put out some West Florida newsletters over the weekend too, and you must have hit that neighborhood or all too.
I talked to the folks.
Yeah.
The more you do, the more that has to be. The more you do, the more that it is. There's more people. I was invited to this one where I think it's
So you get more of that one.
There's always something.
All right, let's reconvene.
Is there any other crazy?
Gary crazy?
Right. So we're going to continue. We're going to test this system again when we need a roll call vote. But right now we are on the report L, which is a report of the Protection and Policy Committee. So there's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Craig Stevens to approve the report of the Protection and Policy Committee report L. Any names under this report you wish to abstain from or handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Report L has been approved. What are your wishes regarding the report of the redevelopment authority? There's a motion by Alderman Scannell.
Second.
Second by Alderman Johnson to approve report M, which is the report of the redevelopment authority, and that was for the meeting of February 15th. Anyone wish to speak to this item? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of report M, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Report M has been approved. We're now on to report N, which is report of the Improvement Service Committee.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderperson LaFave to approve report of the Improvement Service Committee for the meeting held on February 13th. Any items under this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that report is all 10 items have been approved. We're now on to report O, the report of the Plan Commission.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion by Alderman Scannell.
Second.
Second by Alderman Weary to approve report O, which is the report of the Plan Commission for the meeting held on February 11th. Any items under this report you wish to handle separately?
Number one.
Item 1. Okay, hearing none others, all in favor of the remainder of that report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Mayor.
Alderman.
I can be reported as abstaining on items 4 and 6.
Okay. All right, with that abstention, so items 2 through 9 have been approved, noting the abstention by Alderman Johnson. So we're on to item 1 of the report of the Plan Commission. There's a motion by Alderman Scannell.
Second.
Second by Alderman Galvin. Did you listen to it?
Sorry?
Did you listen to it?
Yes.
Okay, Alderman Galvin. So, again, item 1, what we're discussing right now for the council and for those in attendance here is to authorize the conditional use permit for the property located at 430 South Clay Street. Alderman Galvin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. This has been a very controversial proposal for the neighborhood. This is the old Santa Maria Nursing Home. It's roughly 95 years old. It's been there for quite a time. The area, the neighborhood is a real strong neighborhood. It's made a lot of strides recently. There's been a lot of Habitat for Humanity homes put up. NeighborWorks has been very big in that area. We have a lot of young families. We have a lot of people that have lived there a long time. There's some people I've talked to who've been there for over 50 years. And during that time, Santa Maria has been there. And they hardly knew it was there. Occasionally, maybe a rescue squad call, that kind of thing, families visiting loved ones. It closed down. The owners have moved on, and it's been sold. So Reverend Rico wants to open up the Transformation House. He reached out to me. I sat down with him for a couple of hours one day. The two of us talked about his plans for it. He wants to have a dry facility, and he wants to help men who've had problems in their lives get back on their feet and be productive citizens again in our society and contribute. And I don't find any fault with that. I think it's commendable. We do have problems with people getting out of incarceration, people that have homeless issues, and as a community we have to be willing and able to support everybody, do the best that they can. My concerns come from constituents. This thing has been moving kind of on a fast track for them. Reverend Rico did have one outreach night for the citizens to come, and a few did, and they liked what they heard. But some weren't able to make it. I wasn't able to make it. It was scheduled on a night when we had city council. And many of the residents either weren't aware of it or they weren't able to make it. And they're very concerned. There's an administrator at the parochial school across the street who's concerned. There's people in the apartment complex that are concerned about issues there. And because of the zoning in that, he's going to have to get a conditional use permit. And the city's able to set some parameters within that, but legally, if he fulfills all of that, then we have to grant it. And I understand that. But my purpose here for pulling this and is because I want to make sure we can put all the checks in place that will make those residents, if this moves forward and does open, that all those residents feel safe, they're secure, and that they know that if any problem does pop up, it'll be handled immediately and taken care of. And that if it does become a problem site, that there's some things in place that the CUP could be reviewed and possibly rescinded. But I want whatever's there to be successful. Understand, in the best world possible, I'd love to see that place rehabbed into condos or apartments. Paying taxes and that helping out the community and our city that way. But that's not going to happen. And so it looks like moving forward that the Planning Commission granted the CUP, but it didn't have all the things in place I would like to see. And I was told that we either have to place them within the CUP or Reverend Rico has to agree to put them in his operating plan. And we can hold them accountable to either one. And some of what I'm looking for, or maybe before we get that, I know there's a lot of people here who would like to talk, and this might be the time to open the floor for interested parties.
All right, so there's a motion by Alderman Galvin, second by Alderman Nicholson to suspend the rules to hear from interested parties. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. So, for those of you here tonight, and thanks for waiting. I know I talked to you some of you earlier, and guess I thought that was going to go a little bit quicker. But here we are discussing the report of the Plan Commission, and this is for the conditional use permit for 430 South Clay Street. As the Alderman explained, this would be something that needs to be approved by this body. So if there's anyone who wants to speak to that, if you keep your comments to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate that. If you just want to come to the podium here and if you have some thoughts to share with this body, we're happy to take your comments. So anyone from the public can stand up and say, I like it, I don't like it, or this is what I'm concerned about, and we'll take that all into consideration before we vote. So if you could state your name and address, please.
I don't know if I need this, I'm pretty loud. Thomas Beverly, served 24 years, 7 months, 11 days. Didn't count it much more than that in the Navy. Met you served before, I know a lot of people here have seen you. But then I've worked with Pastor Rico, helping him get young men trained, ready for the workforce. That's what I do. I'm a global career facilitator. I help people, I'm a career coach. So being a life coach and career coach, I've seen a lot of success stories. I did plan, and I do have a series of things that I'll help them do there, which is career services, getting them back in the workplace. I work at the job center, but I'm willing to do it on a volunteer basis because I know he's got a successful model, and I trust him. So that's all I got. I can add more, but I think that's plenty for tonight.
All right, thanks for being here. Anyone else wish to comment on this 430 Clay Street? Sir?
Thank you for this chance to address you. My name is Larry Fry. I live directly across the street from the facility. I also am a business owner on Broadway, but I have a real concern about this property. This is a substantial change in our neighborhood. First change that we've seen, that I've seen, is in the 32 years that I've lived there. One of my concerns is that in addition to the nursing home and the parking lot, three residential properties adjacent to the nursing home were purchased, but there were no plans on the conditional use permit for the use of those properties. And so, therefore, there are no conditions put on those properties. So we have no idea what the future plans of those are, whether those will remain on the tax rolls, whether they're going to be used commercially. But if it's to the property of Transformation House, that should be also included on their conditional use permit. There were a lot of neighbors that expressed concern about why this property was purchased well in advance of having the permits in place. It just didn't seem like a wise business decision. And at the planning commission meeting, I don't believe that there was any discussion about the possible effects of property values and the negative incentive for improvement of properties because of those values. Most of us first learned about this on January 15th, got our first information. That's just 7 weeks ago. And have had very little time to react. There's been really spotty, poor communication between Transformation House and the neighborhoods. Many of the neighbors never did find out about the open house or were not able to come. It was just not well publicized. Some of the neighbors found out about this just 1 week before the planning commission. We've had to do a lot of research on our own. A lot of the changes have been just clouded in obfuscation. We just, there are many questions that we have that have not been answered, and that's our big concern. But I'm primarily concerned about those 3 properties that were not included in the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Mayor, can they take questions?
Sure, you have some.
I got a question.
Larry, you want to?
I'm sorry.
Alderman Nicholson had a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So the property was purchased, when did you say?
I have no idea. That's one of our questions.
Okay.
We found out the nursing home was closing, and our last patients were in November. Our first notification of what was going in there was at our meeting in January 15th, the open house.
Okay. And interesting because through my experience, most of the time, I think all the time, with an issue to this standard, to this conditional use permit for what clients were they again? What type of
Your question for this?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find what is it? A homeless shelter? Is that what they're trying to?
It's a neighborhood
Transitional housing. The experience I've had is that they purchase the property first, and then it's hard for the city to say no to them because they already bought it.
It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
Right, and that's a trend. That's why it's very difficult to say no. I've seen this for 17 years. 17 years. And didn't the alderman know about this?
I don't know. This is all clouded in obfuscation.
Okay. Well, I'm just stating that you weren't notified. That's another trend. They don't want to notify the neighbors. It's sad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear this once again in the city of Green Bay. Thank you. Unbelievable.
Anybody else want to speak to this item? They'll make a comment. We're going to debate it once we hear from the public.
Hi, my name is Julie Sigmund. I live at 445 South Webster Street, Webster Avenue. I've been in touch with Alderman Galvin in regards to just worrying about the safety of my family. We have had several incidences already, even being on the corner of Webster and Chicago. We are very visible, but yet very vulnerable, I think. At this point, I don't even let my daughter go outside just because I'm afraid of what's to come. So all I ask is that you guys close your eyes, picture your neighborhood, your family, how this will affect your everyday life. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Peter. Come on, you can queue up right behind that podium, either one of you. Well, anyone. Hi.
My name is Mary Schrader. I live in the neighborhood also. And just one thing that I wanted to bring up is that, Pastor, talked about police calls at his last homeless shelter. He said he thought 5. I have a list here, 6 pages long. Those are the police calls from his last homeless shelter.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Pastor Rico, Director of the Transformation House. And in 2012, January the 1st, we opened up the Transformation House at 436 South Jefferson. There was concerns about the Transformation House then, but the neighbors really didn't know we was even in the neighborhood. We hold a very high standard for the guys there, and it's a no-nonsense. Matter of fact, law enforcement was welcome into our facility at any time. I believe there was one fight in the 6 years. It lasted about 30 seconds. There was officers coming there to look for people. There were officers coming outside there, but it wasn't about disturbance, or I might have had someone who didn't want to follow the rules, and the officer would come and escort them out of the facility. But as far as hanging outside, doing any type of disturbance, there wasn't none. The men at the Transformation House, when they come in, they have to be ready to change their life around. So, and one of the requirements is for them to find work, employment. I give them, if they wasn't working, I give them 1 week to find employment. And 95%, even more, maybe more, found work within a week. Matter of fact, they had 2 jobs. You know, so it was all about accountability, stability. It was all about structure. All the guys had to shave and dress well every day. They had to, all of them had chores. They had to do community service. They had to, if they didn't have a GED, they had to work on it. There was case manager and counseling every week. There was budget counseling. We did all kinds of things to help the men get to where they need to get. So in the 680 guys that we had housed in the 6 years, we have 80% from homeless to independent living. The property that's over at 430 South Clay, that was a real rough neighborhood. Webster, really rough. At the Mexican store, all that area, the apartments, right there, a lot of drug traffic. One of the heaviest in Green Bay, I think. When we moved over there, I've seen guys out in the parking lot hanging out, and I said, we don't have to work with this neighborhood. So that's what we do. We try to work with guys and recondition, help them to get back in the community and be productive. So we like to work with the neighborhood. Just like we did at 436 South Jefferson. Every year we do Feed the Homeless barbecue for the neighborhood. Free barbecue. We always doing something, you know, working with the guys. So when they come in there, they coming out with a whole different type of mentality. They get back with their families. They get back connected with their children. They being productive. But over here at 430 South Clay Street, when we began to purchase the property, I did speak to upstairs to Paul Newmeyer about the purchase. And then when we did purchase it and try to move forward to the program, he said, this is what you got to do. You got to give a certain amount of days, couple of weeks out to to send letters through the whole neighborhood. We did that. Matter of fact, he told me in 200 feet. I did 500 feet. I went everywhere. When I went around to the apartments, I'm looking in there, and there's about 6, 7 guys, alcoholics, sitting in the lobby. They all hanging out. These the same guys was coming to the soup kitchen. You know, and probably the same guy was hanging out at her house down there, but we don't have guys hanging out. It's a curfew. All the guys in the transformation house, they busy doing what they gotta do.
Okay, I just want to keep it sensitive to everyone's time. So this is your request.
Yes.
For 46 units at 430, but it's for 46 units. This is,
right.
We're addressing that tonight.
Yes.
So they've read it, you got the packet. And there's a few questions that we have.
Okay.
Lights on, so I just want to kind of take that before we debate this. So why don't we start with Alderman Stoyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. Pastor Rico, thanks for coming in. I don't think we have any question about, you know, the purpose of your group and what you're trying to do. You're to be commended for that. So we understand that. But I guess what I wanted to know is when did you purchase the building? What date?
We purchased the building January 1st.
Okay. Another question or two. Do you feel that you gave the neighbors enough notice in order for them to weigh in on this? Well,
yes, I believe so.
Okay, and when was that listening session? That was January 15th?
Yes.
Okay. I guess Alder Nicholson kind of raised this too, and I was just wondering, when you purchased this building, did you think that the conditional use permit would be approved without any resistance from the neighborhood?
Well, every time we come in front, there's always some type of resistance.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, you know, I don't know if it's so much a trend, but that can happen sometimes where something is purchased and the assumption is that things will go through, but there's always that chance that there will be resistance. So
yes.
Just so you're aware of that.
Yes.
So. Okay, that's all.
All right, thank you. All right, Alderman, thank you, Alderman. Alderman Scannell?
Questions
for the pastor?
Yep, I worked with Pastor Rico with Transformation House on Jefferson, and I'd just like to ask, with this new facility, that community outreach, that's an ongoing process, correct? I mean, that's part of your modeling. Yes. So this isn't the end of it. I mean, if people came to you, you would show them the facility, they'd meet the clients, and so on. So I appreciate very much everyone's concern. I think it's great that people are concerned about their community and coming forward about a big change in their community. But I know Pastor Rico runs a great program, and that once people get more familiar with it, they'll appreciate it. And just as we did on Jefferson Street, as he mentioned, there were concerns. He had open houses. He had meetings, and people in that area are pleased with what he does. So I just want to make sure that everyone hears from you that this community outreach isn't over.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Who else? Questions for the pastor? Pastor Rico? Anybody else? All right. Thank you for being here tonight. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item? This is the conditional use permit zoning, if you will, 430 Clay Street. Just gonna ask a couple more times. Anybody else wish to speak to this? Anyone else? Come on. Sorry.
My name is Conardo Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director of Transformation House and also one of the case managers. I just want to say that the program is very transparent as far as with the neighbors and the community and everything. And I like to say, like, as far as the property of 430 South Clay, as you've heard actually from a couple of neighbors and also the Planning Commission about how there are some homeless already in the neighborhood, and one of them actually said, you know, right now I don't allow my kids to go outside because of certain element in their neighborhood. That's where the Transformation House comes in. That's what we do, is try to come to those type of areas to help clean up that area and to bring those meaning that it's looked upon as an element, quote unquote, that they can start to be more suitable for some of the things that you look for in the community, to be more productive parts of the community. You know, they come through the program, they're sober minded, they're no longer on drugs or anything like that. A lot of them have to go back to school, get their degrees, working full-time jobs. Now they become renters or leasers or buy a home, and you know, all those things and the funds from all that comes back to the community. So that's all I wanted to speak on.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else? Sorry. All right, there's a motion by Alderman Stoyer, second by Alderman Scannell to return to regular order. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. So we're back in regular session. Back to Alderman Galvin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So going on, I was given that list of police calls for service at the old Transformation House. It's 140 calls for service with 20 reports. When the department makes out a report, that means something happened that required pen and paper. Could be an arrest, it may have been a traffic accident. Don't know. And looking at many of these, they're listed as disturbances, you know, animal calls, miscellaneous, traffic stops. So I got a copy of all those calls, and I'm going through them to see how many actually really apply to the Transformation House. If a police officer pulls a car over, looks up, and he sees he's in front of 436 South Jefferson, he calls out, and it shows up on that list, and it has nothing to do with Transformation House. So what I'm going to be asking for is for this to go back to the Planning Commission. I have concerns in that if it shows that there's a lack of proper management, I think, and that's why we have all these police calls, and that is concerning for the neighbors, and I think the Planning Commission should consider that. I also have a question about the parking. I received an email today saying that there's some property disputes over who owns what property there. And if the one side is right, Transformation House would have 12 parking spots. If you have 46 individuals and employees working there, that's not enough parking if they have cars. And where are they going to go? You can't have them parking on the street. I don't know of any lots nearby where they could go to. So these are all issues, I think, that have to be re-examined. At the same time, I would ask that either in the CUP or in his operating plan, that I know they're going to do background checks. I know they're going to be doing random testing for drugs and alcohol. All commendable, but I'd like the background checks to be conducted such as they are at St. John's, where they have a relationship with the department and it's done on a daily basis. That there be landscaping, proper outdoor lighting, and security cameras that are recorded, so that there ever is a dispute or a complaint by a neighbor, by accessing that video, we can determine if it's a valid complaint or not. And once again, it'll either support what they're doing, or it'll help us realize that they're not doing what they said they would do, one way or the other. And then I've got some other questions for him, and I'd have to sit down with the pastor and go over his operation plan, which I didn't get until just recently. And so I'm asking for this to be sent back to the Planning Commission until we can get some answers for some of these concerns. Again, my main thrust here is that if this does go forward, I want the neighbors to rest easy at night, knowing that the city has done everything they can and working with the Transformation House to make this a successful project. Thank you.
So the Alderman made a motion to refer this back to the Planning Commission, and that's what we're going to discuss right now is referral. So there's a motion, second to refer this item back. You guys, we're having some problems with the board here, so I want to be school teacher, but you're going to have to raise your hand and I'll recognize you, or just say you want to speak to that. Alderman Scannell.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah,
On referral.
On referral, yep. And some of the reasons you want to refer, I can appreciate. I can assure you, though, that the police calls, the department does not have an issue with this facility, having worked with them for the past 5 years. They are on Jefferson Street, right across from the St. John's homeless shelter, so there are a number of issues around that area. But this facility is really well done. The program is really well done. So I can assure you that. The rest of your concerns, I think it's good that we take the time to make sure the neighborhood feels comfortable with this. This gives Pastor Rick a little more time to do some outreach. This gives you some time to go over some of those other concerns. I would ask Doc about the 3 houses, that they are not part of the operation, correct? They are still on the TAC roll? The three houses that
we asked?
Doctor.
The violin guy, right, he asked about, are those
Right,
included?
so there's 3 houses that were contemplated, I think as part of this purchase. They're not a part of this conditional use permit. The applicant, the property owner, owns the Santa Maria complex, those 3 houses. Depending on the use will depend on how those get regulated. If the property owner chooses to rent those out to a single family household, they are entitled to do that in that district, and so they can do that just like any other property owner rents out a house. If they are to use those either as a boarding house where you have multiple unrelated individuals and or part of the transitional living facility, that would require either coming back to Plan Commission Council to amend the conditional use permit, or also require a higher level of code enforcement in terms of the structure and things that would have to be done in the house if it's to be used basically differently than a single family use.
Then I would ask that when this goes back to planning, we include those 3 houses to find out just exactly the intent and what needs to be done with them, if anything.
All right.
Thank you.
On referral, Alderperson LaFave.
I think it's a good idea to maybe bring it back and to discuss a little bit more. We shouldn't rush into things. But I also want to point out what Alder Gavin had mentioned, that he would have preferred it to be done into apartments or condos. Well, with that idea, there'd be nobody on staff policing that unit. You wouldn't know who you get in there. And I'm sorry, there are apartment buildings where have a lot of problems with people. So I'm thinking what the pastor's trying to do here is actually step up from just having it turn into apartments or condos. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gauss will speak on referral. All right, with that, we have a motion second to refer the item back to the Plan Commission. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. So this item, and thanks for hanging in there tonight, it's going to get referred back to the Plan Commission and discussed. The aldermen, and I would encourage the neighbors to go. I don't agree with you, Pastor, that that's a bad neighborhood. I think it's a pretty cool neighborhood, and I just, I just think that'd be sensitive to those people. And, anyway, this will be referred back to the Plan Commission, which means next Monday. When do you guys? Monday, 6 p.m. up in 604. Okay, let's move on here. We're now on to report P, which is a report of the Finance Committee. So moved. There's a motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderperson Dorff, to approve report P, the report of the Finance Committee. That was for their meeting held on January 29th. Any items in this report you wish to handle separately? 3. Item 3. Okay, hearing none others, all in favor of the remainder of that report, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, we're going to get this. Okay, there's a motion second to approve the report of the Finance Committee, items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. All items have been approved, with the exception of item 3. What are your wishes regarding item 3? Motion approved by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Stoyer. Alderman Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to set the table, right now, all claims over $5,000 to the maximum of $50,000 for non-automobile claims go through committee and to council, correct? So under $5,000, the committee gets final say. It's my belief that this is a drastic change to that claims administration process. It's raising it from $5,000 to $50,000. And it removes the review and voting duties from this council entirely. If you look at other cities and villages, some have no minimum. I think Schwaben has done everything. Everything goes before their village board. Some cities are like that as well. A lot of other cities still have 5 or 10,000, but maybe a few being 25,000. I think Milwaukee might be 25,000. So I firmly believe we're abdicating our duty and growing the power of an unelected bureaucracy, and that's concerning. I think we should keep that ability, that oversight with us. So my motion would be to actually change this to double the amount to 10,000 instead of the 50,000. So however you want to word that in there, the maximum would be 10,000.
So we have a motion on the way to amend this claims procedure to $10,000.
Second.
All right, the second Alderman Scannell. You want to say?
Well, and would actually. I listened to the committee meeting, so I heard the discussions, and I heard the Attorney Chavez when asked why 50,000. Her quote was really, "We're just picking a number at this point." So I'm picking another number that I think is more reasonable. Thanks. I'm just using the.
Okay, I wasn't there, but that is what our insurance
I
states.
had right in the meeting.
All right. So there's a motion, a second. So this claims committee, that would mean anything over 10,000 would come back here. Just raise your hands. I'm sorry about this. Yep. All right. Alderperson Dorff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, Alder Weary, I had wished would have come to the meeting a couple times that we held it, but there was a lot more to the discussion than just one quote from Attorney Chavez. I think what we talked about at length is that mostly it's the claims that are denied that cause consternation. Mostly that is where the problems have come in, where we've talked about, well, it's unfortunate that certain claims have to be denied, that the insurance doesn't cover it, or that it's an act of God, or whatever. And so claims being approved really hasn't been an issue at all. And I would really like to ask Attorney Chavez to talk a little bit more about why the 50,000, and give that explanation to everyone at council. Thank you.
Attorney Chavez.
Sure. So the reason we went with $50,000 is because it reflects what the current limit is for claims other than automobiles, as Alderman Weary suggested. The reason we chose that number is because, unlike a lot of these municipalities, we actually have a claims committee that addresses this. We are expanding under this proposed ordinance the number of people, the number of staff who are participating in that. So a lot of these municipalities that have a much smaller number, they have either just their city attorney or a risk manager who's making these decisions. So having one person with that authority is really where that comes in. The second component of it is when we first brought this forward, we were looking at increasing the number to follow with inflation. So $10,000 doesn't even get us to the inflation component, because I think this was mentioned in the 90s. And so we're still looking at at a smaller number than we originally had if we go with 10,000. In addition to that, if we are pulling 5 people's time, I don't think that it's really worth everybody's time to sit in a meeting and go through this process to bring it to you guys. We're doing all this work and we're wasting a lot of staff time when that's something that we could disband the committee for and bring this to you guys to make those determinations. The last component of this is that we are getting a lot of claims where the items are just much more expensive. So now cars, anytime you have a truck, like these Super Duty vehicles, if we break a mirror, which happens a lot, we're looking at like $2,500 just to replace the mirror, because they've got a lot more components to it this time. So what we're trying to do is make sure that anytime we're going through this process, we are looking at just one, liability. We look exclusively, we don't look at the political issues behind it. We look exclusively at what the law says and we apply it to those, make a determination as to whether or not it's something that we approve, that would be subject to immunity or not. Anything that would be subject to immunity. We deny anything that isn't. That's when we make those recommendations to settle. And beyond that, so we have 5 people from the city. It's also including our insurance adjuster. So there's a lot of people who are actually putting their hands on this. It's not just me making decisions randomly.
Alderperson Dorr, anything else?
No, thank you.
Are there any other lights?
I got my light lit. I can't request to speak. I don't want to, I'm just telling you.
Okay, I don't see it, I'm sorry. I'm happy to recognize you. Alderman Nicholson.
Just a question for a city attorney. What other cities have dollar amounts? I mean, like Appleton, Oshkosh, Milwaukee, Madison, Racine, Kenosha, and Buffalo. I mean,
We reached out to our insurer to submit to find out what they're seeing, and it's all over the board. Some people, as Alderman Murray stated, don't have any authority for their city attorneys. Others have their city attorney in 10,000, 25,000. There are some that form committees that include several people, and then those ones have full authority to settle anything up to the 200.
well, like Racine, pretty equivalent to our population. What does Racine have?
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure the city attorney told me that he handles all the claims.
Okay. And then Appleton?
I do not know Appleton.
Okay.
They are not covered by the
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair. Thanks.
So we have why does under speakers it say micronic?
I was testing the system.
Okay.
And when I use it, it seems to be working.
You got a claim mic? We're gonna have one again soon, pretty soon. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so you were just testing the system.
Yes, right.
Yes. I love mine. Okay.
Start a question.
All right, there's we're on item 3 under the report of the Finance Committee, and there's a motion to by Alderman Weary to move this from 5,000 to 10,000, which would be the authority of the Claims Committee. Okay, use the board to vote on this.
Moving it from 5 to 10?
That was no, it was 50.
It was
50,000 down.
Yeah.
Someone called me chair before. Let's keep that in mind. Am I right?
Currently 5 proposals, 50. My suggestion was 10. So it's doubling it from what it was. What's currently, yes. 10,000 is what I'm paying.
Right. Here, not 10 to 15. No. Do you guys, so this claims, right? We get claims all the time, and we, they come to you, but Vanessa has the authority to settle them under $5,000. So Alderman Nicholson just said there's communities that have 25, 50, 50 is when our insurance kicks in. So she said, look, at $50,000, that would come to the city council. Alderman Weary is saying, I think that should be 10,000 before it comes back. It's kind of an efficiency thing. It's, we did this in 1990. And I know who made the motion in 1990 that everything comes here. Even with inflation, we thought it should be a little bit higher, but that's what's on the table. I need you to understand this. This is kind of important. So we're looking to have the claims committee, which is a committee made up of Vanessa, risk management. Jill, are you on there? You're on finance, to settle these claims, and then everything comes back here after 5 or 10,000. So you clear on that? So the motion is for 10,000. We had recommended at Finance Committee 50,000.
One more point of clarification.
Go ahead. This is important.
So the way that I'm understanding this, right now Vanessa can settle these at 5,000 or less by herself.
No, the claims committee.
So there still is a committee.
Correct.
So the only thing that's changing with the proposal that we have in front of us is to go from, notwithstanding Alderman Weary's amendment, but it's to go from 5 to 50,000.
There are a few additional changes, including adding 2 more people to the claims committee, so we'll go from 3 people to 5 people.
And that's the clarification point that I want to get, because we're amending the proposal that's in front of us. So we'd be, with the amendment, going to 10,000 and still adding 2 more people.
Correct.
Which, okay, I just want to be clear on that.
Is everybody else clear on that? Because we're going to vote on this. So you're right. It's to approve the amendments to the claims administration procedure, and that would be increasing the claims committee from 3 to 5. So you have more voices on that. And we had also at finance committee talked about, or they had talked about going from 5 to 50,000. Alderman Weary wants to amend that to cap it at 10,000. So that's what's on the floor right now.
So yes, caps it at 10.
A yes.
And adds 2 people.
A yes. Really, to be Robert's rules about it, a yes vote reduces it from 50,000 to 10.
That's why it's capped at 10. And 2 people. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Are we good? Go ahead and vote.
Yeah, I got one. I voted.
My computer's not working, I vote yes.
Okay. Alderman Weary?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's 2 yeses.
You only get one. Okay. Yes, that's right.
How would you like to vote on this? Alright, so that motion fails on a vote of 7 to 5, or 5 to 7. So we're back to the original motion, and that's to approve the amendments to the claims committee. Can you use the board on this, please?
Oh, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, I believe him, I just don't see it. Alderman Weary?
I just had my thing just popped up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would make a motion then to make it 25,000. I believe that equals Milwaukee. It quintuples what we have right now. So the motion would be for 25.
Seconds. Motion by Alderman Weary, and seconded by Alderperson LaFave to change the dollar amount from 50,000 down to 25,000.
I think it's important that we not remove a citizen's right to appeal to us, their elected body. I think that's no small thing.
Okay, we'll use the board on this. This amendment would go from 50,000 to 25,000.
Mike?
Andy pressed the wrong button. Andy hit the wrong button.
Mayor, mine will be a voice vote. Yes.
Alderman Weary, if you could vote on this.
Aye.
Yes, okay. So that approves this motion by a vote of 7 to 5. For the record, I'm going to adopt this again as amended. Okay, just for the book. So all right, motion by Alderman Weary, second by Alderman Scannell to adopt item 3 as amended. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Okay. So we're gonna move on to report Q, which is the report of the park committee.
So moved.
Right, there's a motion by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Scannell to approve the report of the park committee for the meeting held on February 13th. Any items in this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. Report Q has been approved. We'll move on to now report R, the report of the Personnel Committee. There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderperson Kathy LeBave, to approve the report of the Personnel Committee. That was for the meeting held on January 29th. Any items in this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. Let's move on to report S, the report of the Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission meeting. There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Craig Stevens, to approve the report of the commission for the meeting held on January 21st. Are there any items in this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. All 9 items in report Q, S have been approved. Okay, we'll now on to the report of the Sustainability Commission. There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderperson Dorff, to approve report T, the report of the Sustainability Commission for their meeting held on January 9th. Any items in this report you wish to handle separately? Hearing none, all in favor of that report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. Ayes have it. Report T has been approved. We'll now take up item U, which is to receive and place on file 2 reports, the building permit report of January 2019 and the municipal courts report. There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Craig Stevens, to receive and place on file these 2 reports. Any discussion here? All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're now on to report V, which are the resolutions. You can suspend the rules.
Move to suspend.
There's a motion by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderperson Dorff, to suspend the rules under report V to take items 1 through 16 under one roll call vote. All in favor of suspending the rules for that purpose, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. So the rules are now suspended. Where do you wish regarding these resolutions?
To adopt.
Motion to adopt by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Stoyer. And if you please use the board, these are resolutions V 1 through 16.
Folder already?
No, no, good.
Probably pull 14.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that. 14 was referred back. So, look, I don't want to go backwards on this, but it's resolutions 1 through 16 under one roll call vote with the exception of 14, which has been referred back. So that's what we're voting on, is resolutions 1 through 16 with the exception of 14, which has already been handled.
Mr. Mayor, that could be recorded as abstaining on 13.
Okay, so those resolutions passed unanimously with the notation of Alderman Johnson abstaining on 13 and 14 being handled separately. All right, so we're on to W, which are ordinances first reading. Before we adopt, this is 1 through 7. Let's note right now that General Ordinance 20-18 is amended to $25,000. Right? We already talked about that, we voted on it. So, entertain a motion to advance.
For 1 through 7?
1 through 7? I mean 1 through
11.
11?
Okay, motion to suspend.
Motion on the scout. Second by Alderman Weary. To suspend the rules so we can take these all under one vote. All in favor of suspension, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. I'll entertain a motion to advance. Second
To advance.
by Alderman Scannell, second by Alderman Stevens. This is 1 through 11. All in favor of advancement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Again, noting item 7 was adjusted to $25,000.
Mr. Mayor, if you could also note an abstention on item number 9.
Okay, note that. All right, We're on to item X, which are referrals of petitions and communications. Start with Alderman Nicholson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Received communication from a concerned citizen on why the mayor is entitled to a party at the end of his career. I don't know where that would go.
That's not city business.
Gentleman asked me to do it.
It's not city business.
Yeah. Send it to my office. I'll take it. All right. All right, anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, Alderman Vanderlist.
Thank you, Mayor. We have communication. Any vehicle that is stolen in the city of Green Bay that the Green Bay Police Department recovers, the person owning the car or truck pays the towing fee related to the vehicle. Fees paid to the city of Green Bay Police Department. I do not recommend any fines be imposed on a person whose vehicle was stolen in the city of Green Bay. Give this
Want
to
that to
me.
go to protection and policy, or want that to go to finance? Okay, so that's going to be referred to protection policy.
Thank you.
Okay, clerk, do you have any late communications? All right. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for all.
Motion to refer.
Alderman Scanlon, second of Alderman Johnson, to refer all late petitions and communications to the proper authority. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. With that, I will
Motion to adjourn.
entertain a motion to adjourn by Alderperson LaFave, second by Alderman Burnett. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right, Eddie Toll. Tomorrow.
But did you leave the meeting first? Yeah, leave the meeting I don't think I need them. They thought I might have
Well, that'll do it for tonight. Back to you, Marty America.